So I've literally started this video like 10 times and deleted it. And this car just pulled in next to me. I'm at the park, and there's nobody in the surrounding spaces, but he pulled up and backed in like 3 times trying to get it just perfect in the spot. And I started laughing because a little voice in my head every time I stopped recording was just like, it doesn't have to be perfect, just start and get it out there. And this guy is trying to park his car in the slot just right, and I just stop and say that to myself. It's like, oh yeah, okay, so maybe we just suck it up and roll with it this time. Okay, so back in the fall, I got the sense that I was supposed to do this YouTube endeavor, to start telling my stories. Okay, let's start kind of at the beginning of that, I guess. Back in September, I was watching a movie with my mom, and it made me start thinking about maybe I was ready to think about relationships again, right? So, thinking with my track record, I am 40 years old and divorced almost 5 years now, and have not been in any relationship since then because I kind of been in hermit mode and shut everything down, didn't want to deal with any of that. Thought I'd been doing a lot of the healing process, and apparently I did not have as much of it already completed as I would have liked to have thought I had. But anyway, we were watching this movie, Love Again, with Sam Heughan and Priyanka Chopra Jonas and Celine Dion. And I just got to thinking, it's like, maybe I'm about ready for that, right? But since my relationship history has not been fabulous, maybe I'll let the universe handle it this time. And while I'm at it, why not just commit my career path over to the universe as well? Because clearly I've not done well with either of those areas my entire life. And I think I've always known that they've been very tightly wrapped up in one another, but I didn't really know how or why. Part of it, I know I'm supposed to be writing. And with the writing, I remember when I was in undergrad, I was all set to say like 10 years ago, and kids, this has been like 20 years ago now. I remember I had read this book, When God Writes Your Love Story and When God Writes Your Life Story. I've read both of those. Eric and Leslie Ludy, I believe, were the authors. And I was like, hey, that sounds pretty cool. Maybe I should just let God have my life, right? Well, but then I didn't completely follow through, and I kept trying to take it back and make it, have my fingers in the middle of it, and that wasn't good. So most of what I have spent my entire life doing is making a hot mess of my life. But yeah, after I read those 2 books, I was like, okay, if that's what I'm supposed to be doing, I think that would be a cool path to take. Let God write my story, right? Well, since then, my version / understanding of what I believed God to be has changed immensely. And before, I was very set on wanting to force myself to believe that the religion that I grew up in was the right way, right? And that it had to be. That's what I was told. this is the way it has to be. Jesus said so. Except that's not quite what he said. Anyway, that's a whole nother can of worms. So, anyway, I did think it would be pretty cool to see, what God would have to do if God led the way. So, back in the fall, I finally committed my life story, my love story, career, all that fun stuff, over to the universe to direct. And my life has been flipped upside down. So I know a lot of people think this is nutty, but so I'm on a twin flame path, and I didn't really understand what that meant. It's something that's been coming up. I think I first heard the concept of twin flame back in 2012. Before I got married to somebody I definitely knew was not my twin flame. But that's another story for another time. It came up again in 2020 to 2021, and I started looking into it a little more, but I still trying to do things my way. But I had at least started looking into what twin flames were, what that even meant. But I've known that I'm on this path basically my entire life, because I remember when I was 4, it was like, the best I can explain it is it was like God or my higher self or whatever's out there, wherever there is, was checking in with me and gave me this, I guess, sort of vision of what things could be like in my life. And I knew there was going to be a lot of pain in my life, but I knew that eventually, once I got a whole bunch of stupid stuff sorted out first, the pain would have all been worth it, because at some point there would be this amazing love story and like unconditional love, and that seemed like it would be completely worth it. So I just remember it actually hit me through. I was watching An American Tale, the Fievel movies, and there was a song in it, Somewhere Out There, and that song it's like it just completely flooded my system with like a whole lot of feeling, and this idea about this path that I was on, just kind of a sense of knowing, and I was like, yeah, that sounds fabulous. To get to the good stuff, except for there's a lot of not so good stuff first. And then I think is the purpose of me needing to speak up and start telling my stories. So, my entire life I have been, that voice in my head saying, speak up, use your voice, find your voice, use your truth, or speak your truth. And I didn't know what that was, and I didn't know how am I supposed to speak my truth when I don't even know what my truth is. And I think that was part of the mission to figure out, for one thing. And it took me a long time to start getting here. And I still don't really completely understand it. But I'm finding it has been more directed than I've ever realized. And even when I thought that it seemed that it might be divinely inspired at times. I was usually pretty good at talking myself out of it. So I had this dream a couple mornings ago. Actually, before that, back in the fall. Okay, yes, committing my life and love paths over to the universe, the career path especially. I started to get this really strong sense that, oh hey, that voice thing, that's going to be necessary. So, I got this whim to go on Instagram live. Was live for all of a minute, and it was torture. And as soon as I clicked off of it, I think my cousin was the only person that even saw that I had that I was live and saw any of it. And as soon as I got off of it, I cried because there was so much stress, so much tension that had been pent up for years around the whole using my voice thing. And then I started easing into the YouTube stuff, and my first video I committed to doing because it was 11/11, and depending on what community you're a part of, some people will say that's a portal, that's a big date. So either way, I like repeating numbers, so 11/11 seemed like a good day to start. So I had this whole scripted thing because I didn't know what I was going to say. I didn't think I could just start talking and say anything useful. I didn't know what that was like. And I was still incredibly terrified. So I went to the cemetery again, which I did the Instagram live there, and actually the thing that got me moving on it then was I remembered this quote. I'm wanting to say the name was Les Brown. I heard it many years ago, but he talks about how the graveyards are the richest places in the world because that's where, there's all these dreams that have gone to die, basically. So that is nowhere near the quote. I will have to find the quote, and I will maybe put it in the notes for this thing. So, but that was the reason I went live when I did, because that just popped into my head and just kept screaming at me. So I went back to the cemetery because I had a good friend. Okay, we just start crying out. It's okay. In 2018, one of my good friends died. And I say good friends, but the truth is I was running from that friendship for many years, most of my life, honestly. So we were in grade school together, and I think we were in classes from like up till third grade, and then we had a couple of years where we weren't so much, but back in middle school, when I started concert band in 6th grade, they had it was just one semester, and I was so disappointed because band was only spring semester to get you started on this stuff. But I remember more than anything I wanted to play percussion. I had gone to one of my brother's band concerts and saw that there was a girl that was playing percussion. It's like, that's what I want to do. And I had no backup options. There was nothing else I wanted to do. It was percussion or I don't want to play. But I think the second option I put was flute. God, I'm glad that didn't happen. But anyway, we for my 6th grade spring band class, we had a class that was just for the percussion section. And I think there were like 12 of us. And it was me and my best friend at the time. Were the only two girls in it. And then there were a bunch of guys. As to be expected. Drums. So Tyler was there. And there was another friend that I would connect with later. But it was like, okay, Tyler and Paul, like they had grown up on music. I think Paul was playing piano his whole life, and Tyler had been on drums most of his life. So I always had them like way up here on this pedestal, like they knew what they were doing, and I didn't know shit. And when we did the band thing, that was the last year that percussion had its own separate class. Then it just became absorbed into the regular band classes, and they started doing it all together for the whole year, instead of separate. And I joined marching band in 8th grade and was excited because then I had stuff to do outside of just the regular whatever concert band stuff for middle school. And I was in 8th grade, so I got to hang out with some of the high school kids. So that was cool, right? And there weren't a lot of 8th graders. I mean, there were several, but it still wasn't something everybody had access to. So it was fun. And I loved it. I was relieved when Tyler and Paul did not play in the marching band for 8th grade. And then they didn't for freshman year either. I think they didn't do band initially, and they went, I mean, they might have done jazz band. I don't remember if that was something they could have done separate from all the rest of it. But anyway, they were focusing on sports this first couple of years. Well, the first year. Anyway, I was relieved because I always thought they were so much better than I was. And I felt like I didn't have a chance when they were around, right? So it gave me a little, I guess, space to establish something for myself. And my sophomore year in high school, our band director told us that they were going to start a winter percussion program. And it was just for the percussion kids. So it brought a lot of people. Tyler and Paul came back. And at that point, I was kind of excited that they were back because they hadn't been... Leave it. They hadn't been... Hold on. Sorry, we were doing so good. And then the guy got out of his car and had a dog with him. It only took him 18 minutes to get out of the car. Glad I didn't wait. Anyway, so... at that point, it was kind of exciting that they were coming back because they were good players. And I thought it would be something fun to do, right? The first year, we had a bunch of upperclassmen that were on their way out anyway, so they did not care. But after sophomore year, I ended up getting made section leader for the pit, the non-marching percussion, and Tyler was section leader for the battery, so the marching percussion. And I don't know, it's like we were able to have that connection. You know, we'd been in the 6th grade concert band class together, and then we were section leaders together and all this stuff. So he was really important in my life. Will you stop? Sorry, this is Tazzy. He's watching the other dog get to play ball, and he's getting all excited. And Gidget's wondering why she's not the one playing. Anyway, stop. Stop it. Stop it. So yeah, so leave it. Another dog, hold on. Okay. So yeah, sorry for the interruptions. Why I have whining dogs in the back, there's actually 3 of them. Ziva's laying down. Trying to get them used to having some other people be around, I guess, and not going completely spastic, but he's a healer, so spastic is what healers do. Anyway, so there was that connection with Tyler, and I think the biggest thing about that connection was, well, I'm not going to hit all of it, actually. One of the biggest things was that we had these similarities, or these things that we were connected through. We also he had an older sister, I had an older brother. They were in the same grades. They know each other. I mean, not well, they weren't friends or anything, but it was still just a connection. That was another thing with Paul, too. He had a sister that was the same age. But Tyler was somebody that I basically had on a pedestal, and our junior year, which was, we had a couple years to take drumline more seriously. So our junior year, we actually brought the school its first state championship, like the whole group. That we happen to be leaders for, and no, that's not directly connected to anything, but it was just one of those things we had in common, or we shared together. And then the next year, you know, we had, winning state was nice, but the next year we had our sights set on it's called the World Guard Internationals, and we ended up winning that too. So that was our senior year. The last week of school, I had a lot of stuff that I'll eventually get into on that end. Just heavy stuff that I was dealing with. Suicidal at most of the time. Tyler was a connection that I guess gave me room to be me, and for it to be okay to be me. And the last week of school, I had this knowing. It was 3 parts. The first thing was that I knew that our entire drumline group, the group we were so close with, we were all going to go our separate ways, and it was going to be his death in our mid-30s that brought us back together at some capacity. And the other 2 I'm going to put on pause right now because I kind of forgot about them. After I had the knowings, and so, well, okay, not the second one. The second one was that I was going to be 40 before I really started to sort anything out for myself. Because of that, I thought that meant that it was somehow my fault that Tyler died in our 30s. And that stressed me out a lot. And after that, it was like I was always running from everybody. Like, I didn't want to have connection with these people that had been so important to me. No, because because I thought it was my fault that somehow my life and my sadness was just contaminate everybody else's. And so I tried desperately to run from this thing that I saw happening. And at times I forgot. Stop. At times I forgot about it, and then there would be like little glimpses of things where it would kind of come back. Yeah. Stop. But mainly, I just knew I had to run. Like I was trying to keep everybody else safe from me and from my sadness from infecting the world. So in 2018, after I had actively avoided connecting with him many times, because he ended up joining a band after undergrad anyway, I don't know, but he was traveling with this group, and I thought he's living the dream. He doesn't need my sadness making infecting his life and making it worse somehow. So the times that I felt I needed to reach out to him, or that I wanted to, I avoided it because I still thought it somehow would be my fault. Except then, I ended up only getting the chance to connect with him one time, I think between the end of high school and his passing away, because I had him on this pedestal because he was somebody that I realize in hindsight, he made space for it to be okay for me to exist in a time my life did not. It kept handing me all these things, showing me it was not okay that I was here. And more stories for other days, but we'll get there. So what ended up happening was he ended up dying, and I visited him once in the hospital. Alright, see if I can remember where I was now. Quit it. So what ended up happening was when Tyler died, I finally, I looked at a bunch of stuff that had happened early in my life, and I figured he already knew whatever's on the other side of this whole death thing. He already probably knew whatever I would have to say. So it gave me space to start processing through some stuff. I filled several notebooks full, just writing him letters telling him about everything that had gone to shit early on, and how connecting the dots with how everything had been related. And because I had finally made that space to process some of the grief that I'd been carrying my whole life, it helped me be able to start remembering parts of myself that I'd forgotten because I was trying to just bury me away because I thought I was bad. It gave me room to start taking back, like my voice. So part of the thing that came up that made this so traumatic was I had a series of things that went to shit. when I was 7, my great-grandpa died, and he was like the one person that I knew loved me, and felt loved when I was with him. And really, I think more than that, like, my mom and dad had the capacity to, I guess, to make their kids feel loved. Like, back then, once he died, my mom closed off. My dad didn't know what to do with her or with the grief for his kids. So it's like there was just no love. And it just felt like pain. I always thought it was my grandpa's death that was the traumatic thing, but now that I've had some space to kind of think about it, I don't think it was that. I think it was, I didn't know how much of the stuff that I felt wasn't even mine to carry. So when we were at his funeral, it wasn't just that he wasn't there, it was all that I felt in that place and from people that I had known my whole life, and then some that I hadn't. It was just grief and heavy and all-consuming pain. So I didn't, as a 7-year-old, I didn't know how to process that. I didn't know what was happening. It just hurt. And I don't know how many times my mom has talked about the gut-wrenching sobs coming from me throughout the entire service. But, you know, she didn't know, I think, what was going on with me either. She didn't know that I was as strongly affected by everybody else's feelings as I have since discovered that I am. And it took a lot to get that figured out, too. Another story for another day, kids. But then, after his death, then Taz, he's licking the back seat now. Quit. After his death, then it was just a few months later, after I turned 8, I think 6 months after my grandfather had died, my dog had to be put down. And this was the dog that found us when I was a year old, and he was very much my protector from that moment on. And even got thrown out of the house a couple times for snapping at my dad when my dad would go to tuck me in, because he'd snap at my dad. So my dad didn't like that, so he got tossed outside. But we still had him until I was 8. So when I was 8, he died too. And then we went to Florida with some family friends, and I almost drowned in the ocean. I got caught in an undertow. And my dad couldn't swim either, so when he was trying to save me, he almost drowned. It was just a bunch of stuff. And I got to the point where I was pretty sure God hated me. And I remember thinking at one point, well, if God hates me, then I hate God. And so that was the life or the attitude I took into my life. And for so much of it. And after these traumatic things happen, I had a cousin who's 3 days older than me, and he got information that he didn't need at 8 years old and wanted to enlighten me. And it ended up going to shit because everybody thought we had sex. We did not, because I didn't know what it was because nobody ever told me anything. It was just this big thing to be ashamed of. But I didn't have a chance to even say what had happened. My mom came in and she just assumed that what she had heard was what had happened, and she just laid on the grief and like shame and just guilt, and that feeling consumed me my entire life. And Tyler's death finally gave me space to be able to process it and realize that what everybody had assumed had happened hadn't even happened. But basically my voice was taken from me. Like, I wasn't given the chance to say, nope, that's not what happened. It was just shame and guilt. So I've since discovered, since I've learned anything about astrology, which is not much, but I've learned several years ago that my North Node, which is, I think, connected to my career path, is in Gemini. So that means communication's involved. I believe Chiron is the wounded healer. My Gemini is also there, or my Chiron is also in Gemini. So my wounded healer aspect is in communication too. So like the whole point of my life, both of these things were so connected, and something that I had to process through, and it took his death for me to process through them at all, just because the only thing I could feel up until then was like guilt and shame about everything. And it's like, this sucks. Yeah, this is already longer than I was planning on going. I was figured like 30 seemed to be a good, 25 to 30 minutes seemed to be a good cutoff. We're at 37, which I discovered this year, so I'm going to keep going, is the number that my great-grandfather uses to check in with me, because his birthday was March 7th. So I started seeing 37 all over the place back in December and January. And then I started taking these 2 classes at one of the metaphysical stores near me. And the first class is this God sign class, and we talked about, Andy talked about how, like, numbers you see, that's how the other side communicates to you, whatever you want to think the other side is. It had never occurred to me, literally never in my life occurred to me until that class back in January, that my grandfather would be checking in. Because that death was like all encompassing. It was like everything just kind of went to shit after that. So it never occurred to me that he would be checking in. And then, I started seeing 37 everywhere, and then I had to ask, because I was 7 when he died. So, but yeah, his birthday was March 7th. And I was like, oh, well, that makes sense. Since death hit me early, so traumatic, there was a big span of time where nobody else that I knew, luckily, died, because I don't think I could have handled it. My dad's dad was the next death, and that was when I was 21, I think. So it's kind of funny, because, like, okay, for my great grandpa, it's his birthday. For my great grandma, who I was also really close with, she died when she was 96, I think 2010. Hers is also her birthday. It's 5/15, and for my dad's parents, since they were in there as well, it was death dates, because like my great-grandpa died, or not my great-grandpa, my dad's dad died on September 25th, but his death, I mean, it was another punch in the gut kind of a thing, except for then I realized where my interest in music came from, that for some reason, I don't know if nobody bothered telling me that music was more of a big deal on my dad's side of the family, or I just had blinders on and just missed it, because I always just thought I didn't fit in the family. Why am I the only one into music when everybody else seems to be into sports on this other side anyway? So just stuff like that. But then my dad's mom, she died in January of 2012, and I remember that because it was, she died on Friday, and I think Thursday or Friday, it was like 2 days before I left my advanced and individualized training with the Army, and came back home because, well, Army, National Guard, so I wish I would have gone active Army. I did not. So it was National Guard. So I went back home and got even more lost on things. Yeah, but that whole empath thing, that falls in on the Army is where I learned that I was affected by other people's energies. Another story for another day, because that's a lot of story, and I'm already at 42 minutes. I don't know. It's just everything's crazy, and I'm realizing how connected everything is, and it blows my mind, really. When I started doing the YouTube videos, I think I mentioned that was November 11th was when I started making that happen. I think I even did one on 12/12, because that's a good day too. Repeating numbers, we love those. Another car, hopefully they don't have a dog. The messages that I talked about then, it's like, this is not what I'm supposed to be talking about, but it was what I didn't know where else to start. Had to start somewhere. So I deleted all those messages, and now I'm thinking back to it. It's like, man, I should have left those up, because if nothing else, I think they would just show progress for where I'm at now, versus where I was at then. I decided today was the day that I had to start back at this, making videos and stuff, because today is the 5-year anniversary of starting over. My 3 kids back here. It was so 5 years ago yesterday was the day that we left my ex-husband for the very last time, and so this seemed like the day that I had to get started on this again. And then I had a dream a couple mornings ago, and I got my notes up here, I think. So in this dream, like, I'm in this bathroom stall, and there's a girl outside of the stall sitting on the floor, and she's talking to me, and she told me that I have to start talking and relaying the message I have to share before I can really establish my own mission, and it'll take a little bit of time for it to gain momentum, so I need to start. And, well, that, I feel like that's dead on. It's time to do it. So since today is the 5-year anniversary, and I've been doing a lot on the healing process, but yeah, we still have work to do. There's always work to be done. But it seemed like the time to get back to it. So here I am starting this again. And let me pause you just for 30. Okay. So yeah, so it seemed like a good time to work on gaining momentum, I guess. Getting started so it can gain momentum. I've been writing. I have been doing that. I know I am meant to write books, memoirs, something in that area. It's kind of funny because, okay, I started off talking about the whole twin flame thing that kind of got this started. I don't even know how many of those details I went into. But back in the fall, after I committed my love life and career to the universe to take over on, I was shown the who on the twin flame area. And obviously I'm not going to share that information at this time, because he doesn't even know who I am. So it's funny because okay, this is somebody that does have their name out there and is recognizable in like certain areas, I guess. And my initial reaction when I committed this whole thing, the whole love and career to the universe again to lead, and then they showed me, this is him, and I was like, yeah, right. I literally said, yeah, right, ain't no way. And the response back was, are you gonna let us do this, or are you taking it over again? All right, I'll bite. Let's try this, let's see what happens. And it's so funny because immediately, like I was given a couple directions and things I had to do starting out, and at first it felt like an obsession. It's like, I can't do that, that's obsessive, and that's just not right. And I watched this tarot card reading where whitefeathertarot, she said, you're worried that it feels obsessive, but your guides are saying that it's not, and it has to be this way for right now. It's like, that's clearly for me. It's okay, we're gonna roll with it. There was another a thing that came up the last time this whole twin flame thing cycled around was back in like 2020 or 2021. I think 2021 is really when I dove into looking at it, into it more. But I had jokingly made a offhand remark to somebody that I was friends with at the time, and she was like, really? The way that I was feeling this last time around, it's like, yeah, you're right, it's probably just, it's out of my league, right? Now I'm seeing it as it had to be somebody that I would be able to find, that wouldn't know me, because it forces me to start doing what I know I'm supposed to be doing. I know I'm supposed to be speaking some capacity. I don't know what it's going to look like. My dream the other day said my mission will be revealed as I start doing this more and more. It's like, okay. Anyway, I think it was 2020. I watched the TheGemGoddess tarot card reading, and she said black dogs are important and mean that it's almost time. It stuck out with me, obviously, because my dogs are all kind of, well, yeah. Sibley, where you at? Yeah, she's back there. Yeah. I'm going to go ahead and continue that story, even though I'm pushing an hour. So yeah, she said that this is the only point in my life I have ever had black dogs, and I have 3 of them, and they, I mean, not exclusively black, but primarily. And it's even crazier because, okay, in January, in the classes that I started taking, the first one, Annie was talking about, Lenita was talking about, she said the first thing she does with new students is checks in with their guides to see what our focus needs to be. And she said that mine needed to be on grounding, shielding, and protecting my energy. And trusting my claircognizance. Clairsentience is good. But I need to trust my intuition. So that's been a thing too. The next week, in Annie's class, I didn't finish the Lenita thing. Lenita said that black is a very grounding and protective color. So if you want to use frequency of color, that's a way to do it too. So in Annie's class, she said that she sees black as being the color of source because everything comes out of the darkness. And even this has hit me in even like more ways than it has in the past couple months. Because, okay, the relationship I was in was extremely toxic. Very toxic. And interestingly, Ziva, oh, here she is, that's Ziva, I wanted to get a dog, and he was like, okay, well, it has to be a Kelpie, because that was just his dream dog, because he'd had one before, and it was fabulous, so we were basically replacing his dream dog.